The Pantomime Witch by Hannah Cole and Dawn Aldridge, published by Walker Books. Chapter 1. There was going to be a children's show at the theatre. It was called Hansel and Gretel, and everyone could see from the posters that there was a witch in it. Carol knew all about the theatre because she'd been to see a pantomime about Puss in Boots last year, but Angela had never seen a show. Carol told her all about it. "There are hundreds of seats in straight lines," she said, "and you have to sit in the one with your number on it. You have to sit very still and not kick the people in front of you. Then the lights go out and the music begins and you see the story happening on the stage. It isn't real, of course, it's only grown-ups pretending to be the people in the story." "Will the witch be real?" Angela asked, "with a broomstick?" "Well, of course she'll have a broomstick," said Carol, "but it will only be an ordinary person dressed up as a witch." "But she will do real magic, won't she?" asked Angela. "Oh, yes," said Carol, "of course she'll do real magic." Carol and Angela's grandpa bought 3 tickets for the show. He invited Carol and Angela to go to the theatre with him to see it. "Can I see the tickets?" said Angela. They were just 3 little scraps of paper with writing printed on them. "These are good seats," said Grandpa. "They're in row A, right at the very front of the upstairs balcony, so I think we'll have about the best view in the whole theatre." Chapter 2. Carol and Angela had to put on their best dresses to go to the theatre and have their hair brushed very hard. Angela didn't like her best dress. "You look lovely," said Grandpa. "Everyone will think that you're the most beautiful child at the theatre." "Row A isn't very close to the stage, is it?" Angela asked. "Oh, quite close enough," said Grandpa. "You'll be able to see everything all right." "But will everything be able to see me?" asked Angela. "What about the witch?" "No, no," said Grandpa. "The witch will never notice you among all the hundreds and hundreds of other children there." But Angela rumpled her hair just in case, so that she wouldn't show up too well by being the most beautiful child at the theatre. Angela wanted to take Fergus with her to the theatre. "Oh, no," groaned Carol, "not Fergus. Grandpa, she can't take that old Teddy to the theatre. I'm not going with her if she takes it. Tell her she can't." "Well, I don't see that it can do much harm if she does take it," said Grandpa. "It's such a little thing, it can't get in anyone's way." So Fergus was allowed to go. If he hadn't been allowed to go, Angela wouldn't have gone. She put him in his best clothes. The balcony was upstairs in the theatre. The stairs had purple carpets on them and golden handrails at the side. "You don't have to jump up every step," said Carol. "You're supposed to walk properly in a theatre." But they were such wide steps with such soft carpet on them that it was hard to walk properly on them. Angela jumped and Fergus slid up the handrail. Grandpa didn't mind. They found row A and walked along until they came to their seats. Angela's seat was a very good one, red and furry. There was a shelf in front of it, but if Angela sat on the edge of her seat and leant forward, she could see the whole theatre. There were huge curtains hiding the stage with large pillars on either side. Down below, on the floor of the theatre, there were rows and rows of seats. From up in row A of the balcony, Angela could see right down on top of the heads of the people sitting down there. "These are very good seats, aren't they, Grandpa?" said Carol. "Lovely," said Grandpa. "We couldn't have a better view. Sit down, Angela, and don't lean over or I'll have to hold on to you." He'd bought a bag of sweets and they all had one while they waited for the show to start. Chapter 3. At last the lights began to grow dim and there was a sound of drums. Angela sat up very straight and held Fergus up on the shelf in front of her so that he could watch the curtains opening. "Remember, you have to be very quiet," whispered Carol to Angela. "I am," Angela whispered back. "And don't fidget," whispered Carol. "I'm not," said Angela. "Can't you put that silly Teddy away?" said Carol. "No," whispered Angela. The show began. Hansel and Gretel were very poor. They lived in a cottage in the woods and they had hardly anything to eat. Angela knew the story already and she felt very sorry for the 2 children on the stage. Every now and then she picked up Fergus and whispered into his ear to explain the story. Then she put him back on the shelf. When the witch flew onto the stage, everyone gasped. She was green all over, even her hair, and she looked terrible. She kept pointing at people with her bony green finger. Angela hoped that the witch wouldn't point at her or Fergus. She held Fergus tightly and covered his eyes so that he wouldn't be frightened. "Don't be scared," whispered Grandpa. "Here, have another sweet." Angela put Fergus down on the shelf for a minute while she unwrapped the sweet. Suddenly Carol groaned. Angela looked at her in surprise. Carol had hidden her face in her arms. "What's wrong with you?" Grandpa asked. "Too many sweets already?" Carol looked up. Her face was bright red. "I told you not to let Angela bring that stupid teddy," she moaned. "She would bring it, and now she's dropped it over the edge. Oh, Grandpa, send Angela home. She's a disgrace to us all." Angela looked round in horror. Sure enough, Fergus was missing. He must have fallen right over the front of the balcony. Angela leaned over the shelf and looked down to the rows of seats below. The people down below weren't watching the witch on the stage. They were all looking upwards to see where the flying teddy had come from. But the whole theatre was dark, with only a faint green light coming from the witch's cauldron, and Angela couldn't see Fergus at all. Then the people downstairs stopped looking up and turned back to the stage so as not to miss the show. "Sit down," hissed someone behind Angela. "We can't see if you stand up." Grandpa pulled Angela back into her seat. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll find your teddy after the show. Just sit back and enjoy yourself." But Angela couldn't enjoy herself with Fergus missing. Supposing someone downstairs took a fancy to him and slipped him into their own pocket? Then Angela would never see him again. Thinking about that made her cry. "Tell her to stop sniffing," whispered Carol. "You're not supposed to sniff at the theatre." Grandpa felt sorry for Angela. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'll go downstairs and find the teddy right away. You wave your hand when you see me, and then I'll know where you dropped it." He got up and squeezed along to the end of the row and disappeared down the stairs. The witch was still being horrible on the stage. Angela peeped over the edge of the shelf. At last she saw Grandpa far below, looking rather lost in the darkness. She waved to him, and he waved back and set off along the row of seats just below them. Now Angela knew that he would find Fergus, and everything would be all right. She began to watch the witch again. "Ha ha!" the witch was cackling. "I feel like a spot of magic. Now, what shall I do? Shall I turn you all into spiders?" she shouted, and pointed at all the children watching the show. "No!" they all screamed. "Shall I turn you all into toads?" "No!" The witch shook her nasty fingers, and Angela could hear her fingernails clicking. "I shall have to turn somebody into something," said the witch, "or I shall explode." Suddenly she pointed at someone downstairs. "You, sir, I shall turn you into something. Come up here onto the stage, if you please." "I wonder who it is," whispered Carol. "Do you think she really will turn him into something?" "I think she will," said Angela. "I hope it's somebody horrible who deserves it." But when the person got up onto the stage with the witch and the green lights were shining on him, they could see who it was. It was not anyone horrible. It was Grandpa, and he was holding Fergus. "Look," said Carol, "he did find your silly teddy." "But the witch is going to turn him into a frog," said Angela. "Tell her to stop." "Stop talking," whispered Carol. "You aren't supposed to talk at the theatre." Grandpa didn't look frightened at all. He was laughing. "Step into my cauldron, if you please," said the witch, and she picked up Grandpa's leg and put it into the cauldron. "Ouch!" said Grandpa. "It's boiling." Everyone could hear what he said quite clearly because he was near the microphones on the stage. "Now the other leg," said the witch. "Both feet in, double quick." But the cauldron was too small for Grandpa to put both his feet in. "You're too big," said the witch. "Too big and too fat. I need someone smaller to work my wicked magic on." She looked around. "Do you think she'll let Grandpa go now?" whispered Angela. "She might," said Carol. Then the witch noticed Fergus in Grandpa's hand. "Aha!" she hissed. "I see you have a cat with you. You must be a witch like me. Give me that cat and I shall turn it into a toad." "He isn't a cat!" Angela shouted as loud as she could. "He's a bear, and you're not to turn him into anything, you horrible pig witch!" "Shh," said Carol. "You aren't supposed to be rude to the actors." But with the cauldron crackling and the band playing scary music, the witch didn't hear Angela anyway. She snatched Fergus from Grandpa's hand and made some magic signs over him. Then she scattered some magic dust around him and walked in a circle. Chapter 5. Suddenly, in the witch's hand, there wasn't a teddy any more, just a big green frog which hopped off her hand and vanished into the cauldron. This was the worst thing that had ever happened in the whole of Angela's life. It was too terrible even to make her cry. Grandpa was looking quite horrified as well. "I think you'd better turn it back again if you don't mind," he said to the witch. "That teddy belonged to my granddaughter and she was very fond of it." "I don't know about that," said the witch. "The magic may not work twice. We'll see. I shall need a little help. Will you help me?" she called out to everyone who was watching the show. "Yes!" they all screamed back. Angela screamed the loudest of all. "When I sprinkle the magic dust into the cauldron," said the witch, "you must say the magic spell as loud as you can. Split, splat, come back, cat." She sprinkled the magic dust and everyone in the theatre shouted as loud as they could, "Split, splat, come back, cat," except for Angela, who screamed, "Split, splat, come back, Fergus." The witch reached her bony green arm into the cauldron. Angela held her breath. Grandpa was peering into the cauldron and looking rather nervous. "Supposing she has turned him into a cat," said Angela. "I don't want a cat." But it was all right. The witch pulled Fergus out of the cauldron and Grandpa snatched him back from her. "Thank you," said Grandpa, and hurried off the stage. The witch just carried on with her wicked spells while Angela waited for Grandpa to get back upstairs. At last he arrived, out of breath from running up all the stairs. He gave Fergus to Angela. "Oh, thank you, Grandpa," said Angela. "You were wonderful." "Don't drop it again," said Grandpa. "I didn't expect to have to rescue it from a witch." Angela kept Fergus on her lap after that and held him very tight. He looked quite all right. You would never have guessed that he'd just been turned into a frog. At last the show ended. Hansel and Gretel tricked the witch and turned her into gingerbread. Everyone clapped and cheered. Angela couldn't clap because she didn't dare let go of Fergus, but she cheered and cheered until Carol said, "You aren't really supposed to scream your head off at the theatre." Fergus was sparkling with the magic dust that the witch had sprinkled over him. It stayed in his fur for weeks. Carol said it was only glitter, but anyone could see that it was magic. The end.